Okay, welcome to lesson 35, multi-step equations with variables on both sides of algebraic concepts. Here's our objective, our vocabulary, our rules and our notes, and please pause the video and read through these. All right, so our first example, we see that we have an n here, an n here, and an n here. Now the whole objective is to get the n on one side of the equation. So I'm going to do a couple of different steps to put the n on one side. Ideally, you want your letter on the left. So your letter, and you set that equal to your number. Now, in cases like this, this is usually the best method of solving them. But you can, if you have a number like, or you have an equation like n equals 3, it's the same as saying 3 equals n. You can mix them around. It's the same thing once you get down to one letter and one number. So you will see people reverse them. You will see me reversing them. So don't get worried. These are the same thing. N equals 3 and 3 equals n. It doesn't matter what way you go. So I noticed that -2 is being multiplied to a group. So the first thing I would do, I would add n to both sides. So now I have something multiplied equals -5n. So that's where I would start. I would get rid of this n first. Now I have two things, and that's the idea. You want to cut it down to as little things as possible. On the previous slide, we got rid of the n by adding n to both sides, and we have -2 times n plus 8.7 equals -5n. And now what I would do is I would divide both sides by -2 and divide this side by -2. N plus 8.7 will equal negative divided by negative is a positive, and 5 divided by 2 is 2.5n. Now all I have to do is subtract n from both sides. And I see that I have 8.7 equals 1.5n. You can add and subtract. These are the same letters. So now, you have to have one n, not 1.5. So since 1.5 is multiplied by my n, I'm going to divide by 1.5 on both sides. And n will equal, it will equal 5.8. Or n will equal 5.8. It doesn't matter which way you write it, but this is the best way to write it, with the letter on the left and the number on the right. So let's look at our next example. Okay, so what we have here is two separate groupings. So this is the way I'm going to attack this. I'm going to multiply this group by 4. No, you can't see it. I'm going to multiply this group by 4, so they cancel out. But what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So I'm going to rewrite it. I have n plus 1 equals 3n minus 1.5 times 4 all over 6. Then I'm going to multiply by 6 to get rid of my denominators. And what you do to one side of an equation, you have to do to the other. So now I will have 6 times n plus 1 equals to 3n plus minus 1.5 times 4. Okay, so we'll clean this up on the next slide. So we change that all to 6 times n plus 1 equals 4 times 3n minus 1.5. 1.5 is 1.5. Change the decimals to fractions. So we could distribute these and deal with that. So we'll do that. Well, you don't have to. You could just as easily divide either by the 6 or the 4. But let me go ahead and distribute. I'm going to just go ahead and distribute this one. So whenever number is next to a parenthesis is multiply, and whenever it is next to a group, a number is next to a group in parentheses, you have to multiply to everything in the group. 1.5 times 4 is 6. Okay, so now we subtract 6 from both sides. We get 6n equals 12n minus 12. Now we subtract 12n from both sides. We get negative 6n equals negative 12. And then we have to divide both sides by negative 6, and n will equal 2. Now, you cannot subtract a letter from this number. So this 12 is separate from that 12n. And that's why the 12n only subtracted to the 12n. All right, so these are 2 examples. I will meet you at the end of the video for a recap. Okay, so the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to subtract 25h from both sides. I'm going to rewrite everything that I have. So I'll follow the same steps that I would if I was solving a single step or multi-step equation. Then I subtract my 200. And I get 5h equals 40. And I divide both sides by 5. And I get h will equal 8. Let's look at our next example. Okay, so now we have this situation. So what I'm going to do is cross multiply. So I'm going to use a proportion trick. I did not do that before, but I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to put 2 times a plus 2 plus 2a equals 1 times 5a minus 2 plus 4a. And now we have an order of operations problems. So we got 2, there's a 1 in front of this A. So we get 3A plus 2 equals 1 times 1A minus 2. And see, these problems look big, but once you start simplifying them down, they don't become that big. If you distribute the 1, you will get 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 times 2 is 4. We subtract the 1A. 5A plus 4 equals negative 2. I subtract 4 from both sides. I'm going to rewrite it up here. I get 5A equals negative 6. I divide by 5 on both sides, and A will equal negative 6 over 5, which equals negative 1 1/5 as a fraction, or negative 1.2, however you want to write it. And so we did a little fraction magic there. So go back and watch those fraction videos to bone up on your fractions. Okay, now with this one, this is one term. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite everything. 3n plus 1 over 5 plus 1 equals 1n plus 6. So I combined these things. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. I cannot subtract 1 from 1n. So I get 3n plus 1 over 5 equals n plus 5. I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. So I get 3n plus 1 equals 5 times n plus 5. And you see how I'm rewriting everything as I go through. Then I'm going to distribute. 3n plus 1 equals 5n plus 25. I'm going to subtract 1. I get 3n equals 5n plus 24. I'm going to subtract 5n. I'm going to subtract 5n. I get negative 2n equals 24. Then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. And n will equal negative 12. And so when you solve equations, do one step at a time, rewrite your equation. Do one step at a time and rewrite your equation. The reason why I did not multiply this 5 in the first step is that the 1 was being added. So if I move everything away from this grouping, I have no more plus or minus or multiply or divide from this group, then I could go ahead and solve it the way I solved it. If you did not move the 1 and you multiply by 5, you would make an error. Or you would have to do the 1 times the 5 and everything on the right side times 5. You can do it that way, but sometimes it's just a little harder to remember in your head. So that is our video for this lesson. I thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe and notification bell, and be on the lookout for more videos.